Welcome to Charts Today. My name is David Linton, and today's edition for Monday, the 14th of November, comes to you from London. And we start by looking at the dollar index. A big pop on Friday here, just the Friday candle. We just see it here, really just taking us right above that level set in October, and we really are nudging for new highs on the dollar index. And that's highly significant. We're seeing 5% upside on the short-term chart at 104. We're seeing 1 and 3% upside here on the medium-term chart, and that 5% again on the long-term chart. And if we do go to that level, then we activate a very, very big target around 50% upside. So dollar ran in 2014, looks like it's going to run in 2017. And of course, that is in turn bearish for the euro. And the euro really had that big down day on Friday, and it's continuing further this morning. And we're now seeing how the cloud has weighed heavily on the long-term chart. The medium-term charts are bearish, and the short-term charts are bearish. Downside targets now 6%. It really looks like euro is heading to parity, and it looks like it's going there in a hurry at the moment. But we've got all these downside targets here: 102, 103, 103, 105. Lots of targets clustering to these lower levels, so it really does look now very bearish for the euro. We look at sterling. Sterling had a strong week last week against the dollar. Really did recover quite strongly, but interestingly now we're hitting resistance on the daily cloud, pulling back away from that level. We got as high as 126.50. We're back to 125 this morning. We're still holding the cloud here, and we do have an upside target of about 126.30. That's really where we went, so that target has been met. We do have these downside targets to parity as well, but the euro now looking more bearish than sterling, and that's showing up in the euro sterling chart. Just seeing sterling just increasing its strength against the euro. It's the euro's turn for weakness now. We look at Swiss franc. That's pretty flat against sterling now, and the Australian dollar. Sterling did have a big run against the Aussie last week, but we are just now seeing that pull back as well. So the big story really is strong dollar, weak euro. Just a last look at the Japanese yen. We're seeing the dollar strength there is showing through as well. 107, that's quite high. That's the highest it's been really for several months. So dollar strength is really the measure. If we take a look at the S&P 500, we see here that we're not quite making new highs here. This 2180 level is still weighing on us. We just can't break that. But we are seeing short-term targets upside of 4.5%, these medium-term targets and the long-term target. The picture is still bullish long-term. Look at the Nasdaq. Nasdaq didn't have such a good end to the week, and is just really struggling on the short term. A lot of Nasdaq stocks were down quite strongly on Friday, but we're seeing here a similar picture to the S&P, just a little bit weaker. On the other hand, the Dow making new highs last week. Here's the weekly candle, really big push to new highs. Here we see 4 consecutive days US bellwether stocks, the Dow 30 stocks really running strongly. And we're seeing that in the short term. We've got an upside target of 10% if we could make new highs above that sort of 1890 level. If we make new highs above that, then we've got a new upside target of around 10%. Also, these medium-term targets are all very strong. So it's looking like the large caps, non-tech, looking very, very strong again. FTSE had a terrible day on Friday, recovering quite a lot of that this morning, but was really down 100 points on Friday. So just the 7,000 level still eluding the FTSE. We're seeing this chop here. Strong recovery in sterling having an effect on the top 100 stocks. And if we look at the FTSE 250, that was strangely, it's been less good than the 100 lately, but it was a little bit better on Friday. So picture's quite mixed here still. UK stocks just not making those new highs. DAX, quite a strong pattern developing here on the DAX, just looking like it's going to get through on the weekly. Not quite through yet on the daily, just this resistance of about 10,770. But we are seeing here on the short term above the cloud. So DAX is actually looking a little bit better, and weak euro is probably starting to play towards that a little bit too. So very strong showing on the Nikkei overnight, up 1.7%. We see here we're below on the weekly, very strong on the daily, having had a really big sell-off around the Trump announcement, and we're really back into bullish territory here. 16% upside on the short-term chart. It's all to play for. Asia looking much, much stronger than it has been of late. Shanghai index again, really good run here for the last several weeks. We've seen a really big run in the Shanghai index, and again that's showing through on the short-term chart as well. And then the Hang Seng, not such a good showing last night, but we can see here again below on the cloud quite a lot of downside targets on this short-term chart, which is a little bit worrying. They're all about 1%, as much as 3% downside. So Hang Seng not looking quite as good. Sensex index last week just really below the cloud here, still looking a bit bearish through. India having its own set of issues right now. The Australian index just crossing through on the 60-minute chart, not so through on the medium term, and the long term still bearish. So it's really lagging a little bit the Australian market at the moment. We look at commodities. We start with Brent crude. 45 is now the new ceiling for Brent. We are below the cloud. This is the time of year where we do expect crude prices to fall. We are below on the cloud here. Not much downside targets to really talk about here. We've got 44.40 on the short-term chart, but nothing on the medium and long-term chart. We've got no new long-term targets to the downside coming through. So the picture is quite mixed here. If we look at WTI, below on the cloud here as well, really just bearish on all time frames. We do have a downside target of 42.79 and a downside target to 32.83. So we are seeing medium-term downside potential here. So it does look like oil is coming back, potentially into the 30s as we head into the end of the year. Looking at heating oil, much the same picture, bearish here. Not quite through on the daily cloud yet, but we're through. And nat gas, US nat gas, we're seeing again a similar thing. We're below on the daily and the 60-minute chart just wandering through, but we're not quite through yet, so quite mixed. Taking a look at most commodities, all pretty mixed. Coffee was the one that ran a lot in recent weeks, pulling away here on the short-term chart. Note the lower high and then the lower low. That's a bearish pattern. Still bullish above the cloud, medium and long term, but we do have this downside target of 11% weighing on us now. So coffee's had this quite dramatic run. Looks like it's pulling back quite quickly. Looking at gold, gold had a terrible end to the week last week. We're really seeing the price just dropping away. But really, just $100 in the last few days, gone from the sort of low 1300s now to the low 1200s. We do have targets to 1212. We're nearly there, and as low as 1187. So gold is now looking quite bearish, and that downside target has been activated to 12% downside on the long-term chart. But we are above the trend here. We are still above the trend on the long term. So a mixed picture: bearish short and medium term, still bullish long term. And we look at silver, much the same picture here. So we're seeing that strong dollar having an effect there, and that's really playing through. Copper has been the one that's really gone ballistic in recent weeks, and we're seeing here again upside targets, still pretty bullish. Pulled back quite a bit at the end of last week, but finding cloud support, so still quite bullish. Looking at US rates, well, they've really jumped last week. Just gone straight above $2 on the 10-year yield, and so we've got a real jump there on rates, and they're right through. So that's really now taking us to we're seeing short-term targets of 2.5%. So on the bond rate, it's through. We're through on the weekly for the first time in a long time. Daily has really rallied strongly. Strong dollar, strong rates. We just take a look at some text stocks. Apple downside targets here, pulling back quite significantly, bearish below the cloud all through the election and the last 2 weeks. We do still have a lot of upside targets, but a new downside target of 13% and a very short-term downside target of 4%. So Apple's still looking quite bad in the short term. Google, bearish short term as well. All these tech stocks not really liking the election result. Down here 4%, 10%, so we really are just seeing that play through. Amazon, we're seeing it as well here, downside potential playing through. And then Facebook, well, we're seeing Facebook shares below as well. Downside target to 101, but we've got a lot of volatility here playing through, and a new downside target here as well that has been activated. So the long-term picture is still pretty bullish. Medium term just starting to turn bearish. and the short term is bearish. So that's it for today. Keep an eye on these currencies. The euro is really the big story of the day, and we expect the euro to have a pretty bad week this week. So just keep an eye on that chart for now. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.